Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Winners Club podcast. In today's episode, we are talking about masculinity and the stigma behind the term down bad. Now, you can find our socials at official_the Winners Club on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And you can also find video and audio versions of this podcast on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. Now, we hope you all have a lovely day and a good week. Thanks.
Masculinity. And how dudes are down bad.
All right, I like that. What do you think is the biggest? All right, how do you define being down bad? Because that's a label that's like thrown around all the time now. You know what I mean? So like, tell me what it means.
Well, it depends how you look at it. Like, people could be down bad in multiple ways, but like in terms of what, like girls?
Anything. Being down bad. All right, I'll tell you the way I hear it. I hear the term being down bad kind of thrown around like you're lacking in a situation where you could be winning with anything.
That's a good way to put it. Either
not just
that,
with girls.
You're doing the most when you shouldn't even need to be doing the most.
That too. That's how I look at it. Like,
I think it gets what I've heard from it. It has a negative connotation to it, but also I think it can be like what you guys are saying, lacking of. That's how it can be referenced as well.
Right, like if somebody's down bad, it's like, or like once again, like those two definitions, like, you know, when you could be winning, or you know you're
doing too much.
Because like your definition, Ryan, like that can apply to somebody that's like, for example, like, say they don't have a job, they're broke as fuck, but they have the opportunity to go get a job. You're like, dude, you're fucking down bad right now. Because you could be doing that, but, like, you're not.
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
That's, like, for, like, your definition. For me, it's more with girls, because it's, like, you're doing the most to try to get her attention. Like, that's being, that's being down bad, you know? Mm-hmm. But, like, especially,
I think,
like go ahead.
Mind if I cut you off real quick? I think, like, from, like, the way you're trying to describe it is more how it's commonly used, like, you're being down bad with the girl, because I also think what it is dudes typically are the ones kind of pushing themselves onto a girl. Yeah. But when they do that, they're not being true to themselves. They're kind of artificially changing things about them. So the girl, it's like the, you know, on TikTok, like the pick me. That's kind of what it is. It's like, oh, pick me. I'm going to do whatever you need. So you pick me and select me so I can be whatever for you. But that's not how it should be, you know?
Mm. Yeah, no, 100%.
But it's interesting, though. And I think it's a very controversial topic, too. The term
and it's more common with... No, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to mention... You know, us being in college, it's way more like, I mean, it happens everywhere, but I think especially kids our age, it's, you know, people are going out more and all that shit. So like being down bad is way more common in college, especially because you have so much freedom. Like in high school, like, yeah, you could be down bad, whatever, but like it's high school, so it's a little bit different. Like you're on your own, you're living by yourself. You got to make your own choices. So, you know, like, and once you see all these distractions, you know what I mean? It's like, guys are like, they don't know what the fuck to do. They don't know what to think. They're just like, you know, their hormones are going fucking crazy. Like, you know, they're not thinking right. So, like, once they get distracted by these distractions, you know, especially when they go out to, like, the bar, frat party, club, wherever his social environment is on campus, they don't know how to act because they're like, especially as a freshman, too, when it's brand new to you. You're like sitting there and you're like, yo, like I've never seen this before. I don't know how to act, especially when you get alcohol in you, bro. It's really unfortunate to think about. It's a really sad and unfortunate topic to talk about, but like it happens and dudes are down bad. And I think, you know, social media doesn't help that.
It's an interesting point that you made with alcohol, because that's kind of like where I was going to get with my point of being down bad is when you like, my point about the way you, I guess, interpret it down bad. It's interesting because people kind of, it's a stereotype where you need alcohol to talk. You know what I mean? To function.
Yeah, that's a good one.
To socialize.
So it's interesting because that is kind of being down bad. You know what I mean? Like
It is
having
being down
to.
bad. Like, oh, you need to have a sip of alcohol just to go up and talk to somebody.
You need. Go ahead, Brett.
It can't even be like
Yeah.
I need to have alcohol or drugs to have fun. Like that's
That
the,
too.
the new fun
That too.
now.
Not even just
Same
to talk to
thing.
people, just to have fun and just to go outside of your room. You need to smoke or you need to drink, have a beer. Like
It's like you need a stimulant to function, similarly to how we talked about with people needing pre-workout to go to the gym.
Right,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? It's the same. It's the same. It's the same logic. But
like you know.
I also.
Sorry,
Oh no! Go ahead. You can cut me off.
I was gonna say, you know how people like wake and bake? Like that is a prime
crazy.
example. You wake up, not even brush your teeth, wash your ass, none of that shit. You wake up and you smoke weed because you need a stimulant in order to fucking get up and go do something.
Yeah.
Or nicotine. I've seen people literally wake up in the middle of the night. Bro, I've seen people literally wake up in the middle of the night, hit their nick, and go back to bed. I'm like, bro,
That's crazy.
like,
That's crazy.
do you need that right now, bro? Like,
I don't think-
I don't know. It's insane.
That's not really being down bad, what we were talking about, but that also is abuse of a stimulant because that stimulant is needed to function in everyday life between functioning with your daily routines. I mean, we're talking about college kids. We can even talk about high school kids going to school, going to classes, and then sociability. How are you going to make healthy relationships in the real world when you're sober, when you're forced to be sober, when you're, I don't know, 23 at a real job? You're going to struggle, you know what I mean? And that's going to have an effect on your mental health when you're not connecting with a bunch of people like you used to. It's just something like that. And go ahead.
I was gonna say I think that comes with also a lack of confidence as well, like with
Yeah.
yourself, not wanting to be sociable because you don't have alcohol in you, which I find that's crazy if you need alcohol to function.
It's become
Yeah,
that stereotype now.
I am going to disagree about how you just said how that's not being down bad, because down the line it is. If you look at it into the detail, you're relying on a stimulant to go function. Like your definition, like you said, when you could be doing something, when you could be winning but you're losing, you know, that's being down bad. You could be doing something else instead of going to the corner store to buy a disposable, or to go to the liquor store or buy a pack of beer or wherever. I've literally seen people like skip class because they needed to go to the corner store and get a disposable. I mean, in my eyes, that's being pretty damn down bad, no? Don't you think?
Yeah, no, that's pretty down bad. Now that you said it like that, I had to think about it because it's like
Yeah.
one thing occurs, which it's like a ripple effect. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like kind of like what we talked about picking up bad habits in a prior episode. That's kind of the same thing because now you've become so reliant on a stimulant for your brain. If we'll say nicotine for this instance, or even alcohol. I mean, I see it all the time at school with I just make observations when I'm walking through the halls. There's so many kids that just reek with alcohol, and it could be 3 p.m. in an afternoon on a Wednesday. That's alarming, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just gotten to the point now where when you're kind of entering your 20s, all the things that you are kind of all the systems that you have built for your life are now those are going to be your norms in your adult years, you know what I mean? Because those are what kind of got you through the transition of your teens to your 20s, and that's a huge transition in your life.
Probably the biggest, to be honest. And it's really unfortunate, like you just said, you know, as you get older, that carries on, dude. Like, when you get married and have kids and stuff, like, what? I mean, people do it nowadays. They go to work, go to the bar after work, have a couple beers, come home, and then they repeat the process the next day. You know, but, like, they start now in college. Like you just said, I've literally seen kids go from class to, there's a bar across the street from my dorm, literally go there right after class on a Tuesday afternoon. Perfect example.
That's crazy. So
It's
what
insane.
I'm going to say
In
now...
God.
No. So I was going to tie in your point now of being down bad. Do you think that's attractive? Ask yourself, if you were looking for a significant other and that significant other lived that kind of lifestyle, would that be attractive to you? My answer is no. I think that should be the answer.
No. I mean, that's just common sense at that point. But yeah, people have their reasons, you know. you're never gonna
Yeah.
you're gonna find out one person that's gonna disagree with that. So
Well, so what I guess I'm trying to say though is it's kind of like society is very artificial almost. You know what I mean? It's very artificial. There is no um strives made for love, connections, anything like that. We just talked about it. So when somebody wants a connection, they have to consume something. You know what I mean? To function, to make a connection, and then it's not a genuine connection anyways when you make a connection because you've had alcohol. You're not gonna find the sense of, I guess, like love. You thrive off of love and you thrive when you're happy, and when you don't have that, you're looking for things to, I guess, artificially replace that with a new variable,
right,
but that variable is not healthy for
it's only gonna make
exactly.
you more sad.
I know.
I'm
And
gonna
even
be
like
honest,
distract.
Like, right?
I was gonna say even like distract sort of the sadness you have. People sort of vape or do drugs or even do alcohol just to distract that they actually are suffering.
That's normal. That's like kind of looked at as the norm now, which is terrible.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
It's terrible.
Normalize kids drinking beer at like, I don't even know. Even in the morning, like when people, I mean that's tailgating, so it's different. But like people literally like get up.
So-
Some people get up and like, yeah, I know. Like they get up at like 7 a.m., 9 a.m., still drink a beer. Like, that shit's
Well,
not.
I think people. So like those people. Help me with the name. Brett, you've listened to him. Dan Pena. Dan.
Oh,
But-
Dan Penna.
Dan, oh,
Dan
yeah, I know
Penna.
what you're talking about.
He talks a lot about how kind of these years that we're entering in our life, the years of kind of 18 to 22, I would say, is probably the prime years of where you can set up your life. If you are engaging in self-destructive behavior in those years, then you're not listening to anybody who's told you that these are the most important years of your life. And those are all the older people who've already experienced that. So I think taking that advice is something that people don't do that are our age, which is something they should do. And that's all it really takes. Think of it like this. If you went to the doctors and you were diagnosed with, let's say, a terminal illness and you had 10 years to live your life, I'm telling you right now, I think you'd start changing your behavior. So just think like that, because life, you can die at any moment. Why don't you just think of it like that and live every day? That there is no guarantee for tomorrow. So I think what comes with that, though, is developing
Systems.
healthier systems, because that's how you function. Everybody has some kind of system. Some people have the default mode that they've never changed and never grown out of, which is potentially harmful. I believe that's not really in your best interest. But then there's the people who identify that and change that. And your systems can actually predict, or at least give you a better projection of how your day is going to be before it even happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. I was gonna say another thing too. Like, say the internet cuts out tomorrow. You have no source of entertainment. Just everything goes out of power. Are your systems going to benefit you during that time?
Right, or are they
it's kinda
gonna work against you?
Dude,
Yeah.
that's a great point, because that's pretty much what happened when COVID happened. Do you know what I mean? How many people fell into depression because of it? And then how much addiction of consumption proceeded following COVID, because now that's all you can do. You can't go outside. You can't do anything. So I think people became more addicted to that, and they haven't outgrown it, because that's what got them through. That's what got them through their grace period of life, was COVID.
It's kind of like you're a gladiator in a Coliseum. It's how it's a 1v1 and everyone's watching you. It's like, do you have the strength to handle yourself? Can be the same way with if you're trapped on an island. Like, do you have enough resources? Do you have enough skills to survive?
Exactly. And it could be in any kind of situation, too. It could be in a situation where randomly you just get a gun pulled on you in the street. It could be any kind of situation. Are your systems in a well enough spot to where you can beat anything that life throws at you? Or at least have a new consideration of your perceptions. It's interesting, though.
I think a lot of this has to do with like what's called like parental inspiration too, because as you grow up you develop systems, but you grow up watching your parents. Like me and Gibby were just talking in the group chat about how like earlier, how we were talking about our moms and like how like they've been through some shit and stuff like that. But like it's once you see, like, growing up, you watch your parents. You may not understand it, but you watch a lot of stuff that they do. Like, for example, if your parents are alcoholics, you're more likely to develop into somebody that struggles with addiction because you watch them do it. But you guys get what I'm saying? Like, once you take a lot of influence from your parents, and, based on, I'm not saying you're going to mirror everything that they do, but once again, as a kid, a lot of the stuff that your parents do, you think is right because they're the adult. So once you get older, these systems develop, and they develop, and then you may take these systems into your own hands. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good thing, and that's kind of how it starts. But
no, that's I'm in a child development class, and that's pretty much what we've been talking about. Is like through kind of like, I mean, the prenatal is the first kind of 6 months of your existence, so you don't really know that. But following your prenatal, going up to like basically your teen years, you're a product of your parents and the things that you've seen. And there's also multiple influences, but it's interesting once you get past that, when you start getting into the real world, what you deem as your norms. If you don't veer off from what you've known to be your norms, then you're only going to be a product of your parents your entire life. You're never going to blossom into the individual that you were created to be. And I think that's, I don't know, it's just interesting. And I also think the terms of being down bad, like we were talking about earlier, I think it has correlation to do with, how many single parent households there are now, how many, the divorce rates, you know what I mean? That's what we see. So there is no sense of flowing love in modern society, really. It's rare. It's the rarest it's ever been. And I think that really affects people being down bad. Because when you're living your life out of love and you enjoy doing all these things, your perspective on the world changes.
But out of internal love, though, and obviously not external.
Well, both, though, because if you love yourself, you love enough to give, and that's the biggest piece of the puzzle.
Internal is going to lead to external, but if you only have external then and no internal, that's going to screw you at the end of the day.
And that's part of
it. Because, I mean, yeah, like if you could be, I'm trying to think. Like, yeah, if you have happiness for other people but not internal happiness, like, I wouldn't necessarily saying that's down bad, unless, like, it depends on the situation.
I would say you're letting people walk all over you in a way, though.
In some cases, yes. In some cases.
Lack self-respect. Some cases, yeah. But in terms of being down bad, the way that me and you have defined it, I think it's more so you're either doing too much or way too little, not that in between, and you have no functionability because your systems are so skewed. And it's very important for people our age to understand that, because the bill of regret is a big ass bill. I'll tell you that shit. It's tough. What do you guys think about Andrew Tate's influence on masculinity? How about that?
I think it's sort of good and bad in a way, because there's a lot of people who are, let's say, reviving toxic masculinity in a way.
Yeah.
But also he's improving a lot of other young men in good ways, because I feel like those are the ones, though, that are probably, I would say, range 19 to 25, because they actually are, mature enough to realize, okay, he's playing a character in some aspects, but also, for me, I think he gives good advice on, like, money and just stuff like that.
Finances, yeah.
And everyone's going to have different opinions. Everyone's going to disagree. I don't agree with everything he says. I think some stuff, it's just like, because, he's a straightforward guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to go off your point, Brett, I also agree with saying that it's both good and bad. Bad because, once again, toxic masculinity, and I don't think that's something that needs to be promoted. But at the same time, I think it's very good because, like, with some of the stuff that he says, is because he's very straightforward, and he tells people shit that they don't want to hear, but they need. And I think he exposes a lot of men that act feminine because they don't want to accept their masculine roles. He says a lot of shit, to these guys that obviously have a stronger feminine essence, and the guys are obviously going to be offended by it, but they need to hear it. I'm trying to think of an example of some of this shit that he says, but I can't think of one right now. But it's very straightforward, is what I'm trying to say. And he tells people shit that they need to hear, and because he wants to normalize masculinity, I guess. But at the same time, not all of it is not like the toxic shit shouldn't be normalized, but
I don't think he goes about it. I don't think he goes about it in the right ways, but I understand the message behind it. So therefore, I'm very neutral about him. I only brought him up because he's headlined with everything. Anytime something's mentioned about masculinity, gender roles, his name's always mentioned because of his controversy in the media. I think he's very interesting, and I like the messages that he sends across people, but I also disagree with a lot of the things that he does and says. I'll just give an example off the top of my head. He would never let a woman drive his car. That's a bit sexist, in my opinion, and I don't agree with that. But then I'm going to flip it, when he talks about, I guess, in his podcast with his brother Tristan, he'll discuss kind of the principles of not being down bad. Well, because we'll tie it into what we talked about earlier. He said one time, who is she gonna want to be with more? The dude who's she knows the exact whereabouts, or the dude where he's mysterious, but he is on his shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He preaches the opposite of modernity, and he preaches kind of how you can develop true and passionate love, which is totally just evaporating in front of our eyes in society. There is no sense of that. It's so modern. One of my friends the other day came up to me and asked me, how are you in a relationship still? Like, how did that not fail yet? And I looked at him and I'm like,
the fuck?
What do you mean? I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, well, it's I don't know. People usually just talk for 2 weeks and then that's it. And I'm like, well, it's true. You know what I mean? It's not like it's an artificial connection. And I think that's what people really chase. And I think Andrew Tate promotes the opposite. And I think that's very good. And I think that's ways that you can decrease divorce rates. I think it's just ways where it's like you enforce a strict positive and a strict negative. And those two are complementary opposites, and they attract and meet in the middle. And that's what you want. Two people that are so different, yet connect and mesh out. You know what I mean? That's what it is in a way. Somebody who has such a masculine essence and a feminine essence, they meet halfway. And then they correspond and stay at ground level with one another. They balance each other out.